Hello, my name is Mark Timlin and I live in Melbourne, Australia. About a week ago, Alex asked me if I could share with you some stories from Afghanistan. So I said, okay, why not? So I'm going to share my screen with you and share a bit about my time in Afghanistan with my family and really how God sort of protected me during that time. So I've called it Afghanistan Adventure 2000 to 2005. We'll whiz through this. This will be coffee speed. I remember in the late 90s, there was a sermon by Mark Templer, who's on the right of the screen. On the left there, that's outside the Hope Office in London. And the sermon was around, go anywhere, do anything for the sake of Jesus. And Mark added, some of you may even be called to go to places like Afghanistan. And I remember that really touched my heart. And I started to pray, and then God opened a door 2 years later. And then I remember sitting with Mark and saying, "Yeah, I've decided I want to go." And he was like, "You're crazy. You're tall, white. You'll stand out, and you could be killed." And yet the decision was, no, we're going to go and trust God. And I remember one of his things was you've got to apply faith. In England, you can get away without having faith. Things are easier and comfortable, but just to even survive in Afghanistan, you're going to have to apply faith always. And I took that to heart as well. So we went over to meet a contact to see if they could get us in. And so here's a tool on the left of the screen. I met with him just once, and my opening line was, hello, I'm a doctor. I'd like to work in your clinic. He'd converted his house to a clinic in Kabul and wanted to help those who were ill and suffering. And he was a different faith, and yet when I asked him, "Can I work with you in Kabul?" he says, "Absolutely, I'll take you." And I was really surprised that he was so ready to take me and Vicky. He'd only just met us, and he was risking his life to take foreigners in, and that was the time when the Taliban were in power. And years later, I actually asked him, "So, Izzatullah, why did you trust us?" And he said, "Oh, because I had a dream that an English doctor would come to me and ask to work with me in Kabul." And then on the other side, on the right of the screen, that was Maria, and he was assigned as our bodyguard. And the amazing thing with him is he actually, again, we found out this out later because we never had any problems with the Taliban governments and the guards, and everyone else seemed to be having problems, but we didn't. And he was assigned to us as a bodyguard, and he actually grew up with the leader of the Taliban, and he was seen as the sort of the elder in the village, and like the village sort of priest. And the head of the Taliban would come and eat with him and respect him. And so now, as an older man, he had the respect from the leader of the Taliban. And so him just being with us meant that we were totally protected. So there was four of us. We had a couple, Shakil and Poonam, from the church in Peshawar. So they joined us, and we started our Afghan adventure. That's Vicky and myself in our home in Kabul. That's just so we would go to this old hospital, and this is on the way. This is a block of flats that we'd pass every day. Again, people were living in there. So the place was pretty demolished, the whole city. It was like a World War II movie. This is Esanullah, who's our first Hope staff member. So again, as we were trying to get registered, we were meeting with the Taliban government, and he was there actually interpreting for us. He spoke English, and he said later, when he was reflecting on that time, that there was something different about Mark and Vicky. And so as a result, he actually asked to work with us and actually leave his post with the Taliban government. And that was our certificate. So we managed to get registered. It was, again, quite challenging. So we're registration number 73 of the charities. And we've got the signature there from Mullah Saduddin Saeed. And it was daunting, actually, being interviewed by the Taliban. And I remember one of the things they asked me was, why did I look like Jesus? So we started work in a clinic, treating the sick, mingling with the Afghans as the Afghan staff in the clinic. There's me in the background there, and there's Vicky to the right. And then as we were doing that work and praying every day for the fall of the Taliban, trusting God and building relationships, suddenly we had to evacuate because of 9/11, what happened with the World Trade Center attacks. And again, it was very sad time, all the death and the pain, and then as we were reflecting, what do we do now? So we were back in Australia, and we thought, we need to go back to Afghanistan and help that country to rebuild after all the bombing and devastation. So we got back into Kabul, Afghanistan, a few months later, and this time actually Shakil and Poonam, they weren't allowed to come back in again. They had some problems, and so we said, okay, who can help us? And we asked the Indian churches, and as a newly married couple, Mavan Valley, they hadn't even been on their honeymoon. So in actual fact, this was effectively going to Kabul was their honeymoon, and they said, yeah, sign us up, we're ready to go. So they came to serve with us. I remember one of the first projects was we were helping this old hospital, and there was a generator that didn't have any electricity supply, and the generator wasn't working. And so we asked some US military guys that were living nearby to us to come and help restart and fix this generator. So they got it fixed, and they were so excited. They actually got the message all the way up to George Bush at that time that this was the first completed project by the US military to fix this hospital generator. And then actually it broke down again, and I think they were so embarrassed they actually bought us two new ones through some funds. I do remember also how God worked through just even the hospital working with. The Taliban says, you need to go to this other hospital. It's a building that just needs doors and windows. We can move everyone there. And we looked at the building and thought, this needs more than doors and windows. We can't do it. And then under the new government, they also said, you can do this. This is the first, getting some sunlight here now, the first hospital to be rebuilt. And we, again, applied faith. And after 4 months, we got the funding. It was rebuilt. This is just a picture. I think it's all brothers tonight, but this is a picture of a worm. This was from my wife. And she had this actually while she was pregnant with our first child, our daughter. And the worm was actually longer than our daughter at the time. And that's Aisha. And again, I think once we started having children, it was a sort of having faith, that God would protect them and look after them. We lived on a street called Muslim Street, and that's the little playground, a rubbish heap with a burnt out car. But again, God looked after us, and there was just a handful of disciples that were working together in hope, and we'd have people visit us. A couple there, Ray and Judy, they came over, some brave people, and another brother there in the background. But again, you can see there's some bodyguards there with guns. They're protecting us, and this was actually a fun activity. They were showing us the strength of Afghans, and so they actually had these guys lying down the floor and a tractor kind of ride over them. I definitely wouldn't recommend that. Kandahar as well, we did some projects down there, and an area which is very dangerous, and yet God really protected us. That's two of my three children, Aisha and Joel, and that's them in Afghanistan. Again, how God really looked after them, how now they're teenagers, they're both baptized disciples, and it's amazing how they've grown up. God's looked after them, and they've grown up to love God. We've got our youngest who's studying the Bible. There's also a photo. This photo is interesting because this was actually a photo that was found on the hard drive of a terrorist group. The military in Afghanistan, they found some terrorists. They seized them and seized all their computers, and then they came and told us, oh, by the way, we found some photos of you and your staff on the computers of these terrorists, and you were targets. But again, it was just amazing how God protected us during that time. There's a picture of Mark Templer, who also came to visit us. And again, I'm very grateful that my heart was moved by God's word and applying faith always, and it allowed God to open that door for me to go through it. So really, my encouragement to you all is just dream for God to open doors. And who knows, you might end up in a place like Afghanistan, and God will increase and work through your faith and do amazing things. I did have a request from Alex, so I'll do this just to show a little video clip of me getting the award from the Queen. The thing that you might be interested in is that I did actually turn my back, which you're not supposed to. So have a quick look at this before I sign off.
Dr. Mark Timlin for services to healthcare and education in Afghanistan.
Okay, well, I hope that was encouraging to you. Good night. And Alex was very sad that we couldn't come over to the Vision 2020, but hopefully we'll see you in a couple of years. And I love you, brother. Take care and dream great dreams for God. Good night.